All right, let's get started with FCBC, Fieldcraft and Battlecraft. As I stated before, that we'll get started with Fieldcraft and Battlecraft, which is one of the most important topics and carrying a good amount of weightage for your exam as well. Now, in your Fieldcraft and Battlecraft, when we start by talking about it, you know that these are the aspects of military training, and it is like preparing the soldier to face the enemy. So the presence of mind that is important is going to play a role here. So what is the aim of this particular short presentation is to introduce you all to the basics of fieldcraft and battlecraft. Okay, so let's talk about the fieldcraft first. It is the art of using the ground, the way we use ground. I mean, the best use of making the ground and the weapons which are available to the best of one's own advantages. Because now, after this, after you understand the fieldcraft, remember that we will go into the intricacies of understanding what are the types of grounds and what are the different weapons that are available with us, so that the combination of the two, the knowledge of the combination of the two, can be used to the best of one's own advantages, to be used at the spur of that moment when it is required. Okay, so craft is the art of using ground and weapon. Okay, so this is some kind of an advantage of having the knowledge about the different phenomenon which different phenomena which are present around you. So remember that what is fieldcraft? It is the art of using the ground and weapon. Okay, fieldcraft is nothing but it is the art of using ground and weapon. Right. So let me just share the full screen. Sorry. So here, I repeat, remember it right here, right now. What is fieldcraft? It is the art of using ground and weapon available to the best of one's own advantage, as to how you make use of the dead ground, the high ground, etc. So now, what are the activities which are or the methodologies which are included in the fieldcraft? You should be able to recognize and describe the target well. Okay, description and recognition of the target refers to how you are explaining the target to your fellow mates, to the fellow soldiers, or to other members of your section. Personal camouflage and concealment is important because you would always like to not to be seen by the enemy. This is your first wish, because nobody would like to be recognized by the other enemy army, but rather you would like to recognize them well. Judging distances is important. This is the example I cited in the last class also, that you should be able to make out the distance. Why? For the best use of the ground as well as weapon again. So this forms an important part of the fieldcraft. It is very important to make out whether the target is at 100 meters or at 500 meters away, so that you can make the best use of the weapons that are available. Then we talk about the movement of with and without arms, because when you carry out the movement with arms and without arms, in both the cases you should be having some symbols to denote to the rest of the members of your section, or the troop or the army that you're actually moving in. You should be able to show it with the help of movements as to what you're trying to indicate without making much noise. So with and without arms, in both the cases, there are a number of signals that are used. Okay, and last but not the least, we'll also be talking about the fire discipline and control. In fire discipline and control, we will be talking about opening up the fire. We will be talking about opening up fire to the enemy, and at what moment should that decision be taken, because it should be used very judiciously. Okay, now when we talk about battlecraft, it refers to some sort of drills. Drills are like practices that you generally do. Now whatever you do here in as an NCC cadet, as a part of army, you basically call them drills. Like if you are doing any sort of an exercise, like if they're putting you to some sort of a movement, or say the cleaning of a statue, only one of the exercises that you take up, you generally call it a drill. Why? Because drill are those exercises that you prepare you for the final moment as to when it is actually required. So, when we talk about the battlecraft, it refers to the drills which are generally conducted well before time, so that when the immediate action needs to be taken up, say when it is required to be employed on the main battlefield, then you, if it, things are already planned, at that very spur of moment, you do not have to work out a plan. You already have a plan in hand, and it will get implemented automatically. So that is why battlecraft refers to some sort of a drill which has already been conducted prior to the battle, much before. I mean, you expect the battle to happen also at times, so that when you have to face the enemy, even in certain situations, you are able to face the enemy very strongly, and with a plan that is already set in your subconscious as well as conscious mind. Because when you talk about such kind of things, you can always, when you are talking about the battlecraft, if the battlecraft has been performed, I mean, it has already been embedded well into your minds, you won't have to think twice before acting in the real battle. So this is something, battlecraft is something that prepares you for the actual battle on ground. So what are the pros of it? It saves a lot of time. It ensures rapid action because you do not have to put in your minds to work out a plan. Although the presence of mind is important, but let me tell you, as Louis Pasteur said, that chance favors the trained mind. If you are already trained, then the moment you have a chance to face and finish the enemy, it can only be done if you have already got the training for it. And this training is what is attained by making use of the battle drills. These are the drills which are conducted much before the battle, so that you are prepared for the final battle at the time of the fight. Okay, or at the time of the battle, to be more precise. So, knowledge of field signals, section and platoon formations is basically essential for the execution of battle drill. But we look into the topics which will be covered as a part of battlecraft. So we have talked about two things as of now. We've talked about the fieldcraft, which is the art of using the ground and weapon. Now, this knowledge is important so that you are able to make out the distance, the target, and make use of the weapon that is already available with you. So, for making use of it at the time of battle, you need to have a prior information about the weapon as well as the ground. And for the battlecraft, it refers to the actual drill, the exercises. Like, sometimes you have the fire drills. The fire drills, I mean, I'm talking about, say, when there is like a fire in the place. So the fire station people, what they do, they carry out drills so that when they have to face the emergency kind of a situation, there will be no time to actually discuss it out with the entire team. So, to prepare the entire team for the actual battle, it is very important that you carry out those drills well beforehand. Okay. So, in battlecraft, field signals are very important. Section formation is very important. You have the fire control orders. When I talk about the fire control orders, it is the use of your weapons and the orders which are generally given to control fire. Whether you have to start shooting at the enemy, or you have to control yourself till the final moment arrives to follow your senior very sincerely. This is what refers to fire control orders, in which you have to just take care of what your seniors are guiding you for. And the way those orders are taken and understood is what is covered under this particular topic. We talk about fire and movement and the section battle drill. All right, this completes the first basic definition. So I hope that you all have understood the meaning of the battlecraft and the fieldcraft. When we talk about the fieldcraft, it refers to the make the best or the art of using the ground and weapon to one's own advantage. And why do you want to use the ground and weapon? So that you make the best use of everything that is available to you at the time of battle. Then battlecraft refers to the drills which are conducted prior to the battle, so that you are very well prepared with your entire team to face the enemy at the time of battle. So we've checked out the examples which are covered under fieldcraft and battlecraft. You should be remembering them so that you can actually check them up. Now, one of the most important aspects of fieldcraft that I talked about was your judging distances, right? It is very important to judge distances. So why should we be able to judge distance? You know, we should be able to judge a distance so that we know when to open fire. All right, you cannot randomly say, if you have a range, or if the range of your weapon is around say 300 meters, and your enemy, I'm just giving you a weird example. If say the range of your weapon is 300 meters, and if say the enemy is at 700 meters away from you, will there be any use of making use of that weapon at that time? No, you will have to actually come down to the range where your weapon is going to be really effective. So you should know when to open fire, and that is when you reach at the right distance from the enemy. You should know which weapon is to be used. Say, if you have a variety of weapons, you should know which one is to be used at which distance. And for that, the range, the make, the kind of bullets that are being used, and everything. So you should, and just in case if you face any trouble with your weapon, you should be understanding the weapon very clearly. So, why should we be able to judge the distance? First, we know when to open fire. Second, we should know which weapon is to be used. Third, it can indicate the targets to other men, because there may be other people who are taking care of the fire orders which are going to be given by the senior officer. So, for that, there should be a proper indication to the other member of the section so that they know when to use the fire orders. Okay, and then it is also important to pass back accurate information when acting as an observer, because you may be placed as an observer to inform the other section which is actually approaching. So there should be proper information that should be cited to them. If there is a miscommunication there, then you are in for trouble for sure. So remember this right here, right now, an important question from C certificate point of view, that why should a soldier be able to judge a distance? So judging distance is important because one knows when to open fire, one knows which weapon is to be used, one knows one can give a clear cut indication of the targets, and then it is also important to be able to communicate properly as an observer. Okay, so why are we required? Why you required to judge distance? We need to indicate landmarks. Map reading is again very important, and judging distance becomes an inherent part of that, because you will be able to do map reading well if you're able to make out the distances between any 2 points on the map clearly. And again, it can pass information accurately when acting as an observer, and one knows when to open fire. Now, let's check out the methods by which we can judge distances. Please remember these 6 methods which are primarily important for judging distances: unit of measure, appearance method, section average, key range, halving, and bracketing. Now, first of all, let's talk about the unit of measure method, which is also known as the 100-meter method. Okay, unit of measure or the 100-meter method. Why is it known as the 100-meter method? Because the unit of measure chosen is normally 100 meters. Say, you should be having a rough idea. Say, if you were sitting in your balcony, so just look at 2 lampposts around, or just look at the trees that you see around, or a tree and a house, whatever you can actually, or the distance between 2 houses. You should fairly have an idea as to what is the approximate distance between the 2 houses, or you should be having a rough idea of what 100 meters is going to be around. Say, if you have an idea, then if you are checking up a target which is, say, at 700 meters away from it, so you can easily multiply it as per your vision to check up that distance. Okay, so you will always fairly come around the same distance, or just check out anything that is around you. Okay, check up any target wherever you are sitting. Just check up any target, maybe the wall of your house or any other place. Say if the distance between you and your mobile phone or your laptop is around 1 unit. Okay, that 1 unit for us in the 100-meter method is 100 meters. So if it is 1 unit, so then you can multiply that much roughly to get to the wall, whichever wall you have targeted as of now. So for me, if it is like the distance between me and my system is 1 unit, it will be like 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit, 5 unit, and maybe I can comfortably reach till 15 units. आई होप यू गेट द पॉइंट. एक अंदाजा होना चाहिए कि 100 मीटर्स कितना है. Then उसी अंदाजे से we just multiply it in our view of the entire place till the target, and we multiply that distance and we get to the target like that. So if we have an idea of, say, the distance between two houses, so we multiply that distance in our view that we are viewing to reach till the target. So if the target is roughly, say, at 6 units of that, 6 multiplied by the distance that we are talking, then it will be 600 meters. Okay. Say, I mean, if I check out the distance between this tree that you see here and say if this bush, if this distance is roughly, say, 100 meters. So what I'll do, and maybe my target is like here. So what I'll do, I'll multiply this becomes 200. Then, sorry, and then I'll just move to another one. Sorry, it shows very clearly here. Say you are the observer here, and your target is, say, at this particular point, right at the end of the valley or the ground that you see here. So what we do is we check up a rough distance. Say if this is like, uh, if I have a landmark here, now here in this case, the mark comes in right here at the verge of the road, so, or a lane which you can see. So if this is 200 meters, we roughly take the double of it, it becomes 400 meters. Then we double it, it becomes 800 meters. And then we finally take another unit of that. So we add each unit and we keep doubling it. So that is your 100-meter unit of measure method. So you keep actually making it out like that. If you have a clear-cut idea of 100, 100, 100, 100 would make it a lot. So you can even double up the distance like that. So if you double it up further, 800-meter double up further, so it will reach somewhere here, roughly in our view, that'll be 1600 meters. But we have to just stop here. So whatever is left here can be roughly approximated. And you know that the farther the distance goes, the narrower or the smaller the view actually shows. So you can just make it out. It's like common sense that you're using. So that's all about the 100-meter method, where you are just making up a rough approximation from the distance that you already know. So the person knows that I am 200 meters away from this point. Let me double it up, and then it becomes another 200 meters, and then so on. So till this point, one can easily reach up the distance. So that's one way of making up the unit of measure method. These things are important. That unit of measure method is basically 100 meters method that you have to remember, and the unit of measure that is chosen, 1 unit. So you choose a mark on your way which is 100 meters apart, and then by making use of it, you fairly just keep marking your points, like you do it by making use of a scale. So you reach that point. It's like you draw a straight line between the observer and the final point, take a rough approximation of 100 meters, and then by making use of that 100 meters, you can just keep going beyond it. Okay, so now let's move on to the appearance method. Now, appearance method is something like, if you're sitting just next to me, I will be able to make out the clear features of your face. Like I can see your eyes, I can actually check out your face, your body, and then, the rest of the appearance also. I can clearly check out your fingers. If you now, rather than sitting close to me, you move it 100 meters apart, I will not be able to make out the intricate details of your face. Like, I will not be able to see the face marks. I will not be able to make out probably whether two fingers are staying together or with some distance in between them. So the visibility reduces a bit. When you move beyond 200, 100 or 200 meters, what happens is, like, now I can actually check up the image or the face completely. I can check up the face clearly with features on, and the rest of the body will just give me an appearance that yes, it's a human body which is standing beyond 200 meters very clearly. Now, when we move to 400 is yards, I mean, sorry, it is in terms of yards. So when we move at 400 yards, what I mean to say is, like, when the person or the target keeps moving away from us, the farther it goes, the lesser distinct it becomes for us to make it out. So we have to understand. So by making use of that, this particular principle, that the visibility reduces as the object moves away from us or the target moves away from us, can be made use of judging distance. Now, so this is known as the appearance method, because just by looking at the appearance, we are making out how far the person is. So at 400 yards, what happens? These are some important marks. Because, of course, if the enemy is very close to you at 100 yards or 200 yards, you will be able to make out absolutely whether that's a human being or just a figurine that you're making out. Okay, but when it goes at 400 yards, the body remains in shape and the face is difficult to distinguish. Okay, so then you understand from the normal nature of the body of the living organism, you can easily make out whether that's a tiger, whether that's an animal, some other animal, or it's a human being. So the body shape remains the same. So if you are able to make it out from the shape, that means the body may be roughly around 400 yards away from us, from the observer. Now, if it is at 500 yards, beyond 400, that is at 500 yards, the body appears to taper slightly, so the shape will also start getting distorted in your view. But you can check out the movement always. If there is any kind of movement, you can make out that the enemy is at 500 yards away. Why? Because agar wo 400 yards pe hota, to tab you could have easily made out the kind of the shape of the living organism. So if the body shape actually tapers a little and you see movement, you know that whatever you are targeting is at 500 yards away. And at 600 yards, what will happen? It's further going to shorten for us, and the head just appears like a dot. So if you see a dot moving, you know there's some kind of a movement. So target is there at 600 yards, because at 600 yards, I cannot make out the absolute shape of the living organisms and forget about the details. Details are not visible at all, and the body tapers obviously from the shoulders downwards noticeably. So, these are some of the observations of the appearance that can be checked out. So, this is like a general observation for majority of us. It is like a clear cut view of vision. That is why when you give your SSBs, your entire medical checkup is done, so that your fitness can be checked, and apart from your vision, which is very important, and your hearing abilities also. There are a number of sounds that are also kind of signals which are used. Okay, so for a normal vision person with a 6 by 6 of mark of both the eyes, so there, this is the condition which is important for the appearance method. The conditions are, of course, remember, at before 400 yards, you can at least make out the face and the body shape. And at 400 yards, the body shape remains same in shape, but the face is difficult to distinguish. At 500 yards, the body appears to taper slightly from the shoulder, and the movements of the limbs can be seen. And at 600 yards, remember that the face just appears as a dot. Okay, so this is what is your uh, appearance method. So now for the section average. Now a section generally comprises of 10 people, 10 army men. Each man in the section is asked to judge the distance of a given object. Okay, say supposedly the 10 of the section, the 10 members of the section are given a choice. So they will roughly make up um give their ideas of what is the distance between them and the target. So a consolidated number is taken from all, and then the average is taken. The average of all the 10 members is what is known as the section average. It is not just the maximum and the minimum, but let me tell you, the maximum and the minimum will of course give you a rough average, but then the best use of section average, it all depends on time. If you have time, you actually can check up the distances judged by each of the army men, and then divide it by 10 for a section. And if at all you do not have time, you just check up the maximum distance that one has judged and the minimum distance that another person has judged, and you add the two and divide it by 2 to get the average. This is what is known as the section average. This method is quite important because it's used, as you know, all the army men are very knowledgeable. So they are very well trained to judge distances properly. So this is kind of an important method because the rest of them are still based on some kind of an appearance, which is a greater approximation with greater chances of error. Then when we talk about the 100 meters again, it's like on personal viewpoint. But here in section, it's making use of the brilliant minds which are there around the members. So this method may be resorted to under the following circumstances: when there is ample time available, judging of distance is made difficult by mist or darkness. So when the leaders difficult, it becomes difficult for the leader also to make it out properly. So then it's better to take the options from the other people as well. Judging of a long distance is involved, say beyond 400 yards, because at 500 and 600 yards in the appearance method, we have already seen what happens in the 500 yards method. The body shape and the face is absolutely not clear, and at 600 yards it becomes worse because you just see a dot instead of seeing the face. Okay, so that way is it becomes a little difficult, so it's better to take the average of this section. So caution must be exercised in the estimation of a few who may foolishly overestimate the distance. Say supposedly if you know everybody is saying that the distance may be around 500, 550, 580, 520, and so on, and suddenly there is one person who just randomly says it may be around 1100 yards. So that is something which is just falling out of your range because nobody is falling near it. So this is totally out of place. So such values should actually be ignored and the average should be taken accordingly. आपको पता है कि अगर 9 लोगों से आपने जज करवाया है distance, so you will just be dividing the total by 9. And if the 10th person is giving you a weird reply, even if uh, you know it matters in the section, you just have to completely ignore it to take the section average. Now, what is the key range method? Key range may, if the range of the certain object is known, like for example, I know that the distance between me and a tree that I can visualize is around 500 meters. ठीक है, तो मुझे पता है कि उन दोनों का डिस्टेंस कितना है, 500 मीटर. अब हम उस 500 मीटर को यूज करके we'll find out the distance of our target. This key range method is somewhat similar to your unit of measure. लेकिन यूनिट ऑफ मेजर में वी स्टिक टू 100 मीटर्स ओनली. की रेंज गिव्स यू द फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी टू मूव टू एनी रेंज. मतलब आपने अगर 100 मीटर्स में यू जस्ट हैव टू मेक आउट अच्छा ये दोनों का 100 मीटर है तो उसके हिसाब से यू विल बी कैलकुलेटिंग योर टारगेट. बट की रेंज में what you will be doing is that if the range of the certain objects is known, if I know that there are two lampposts, okay, the distance between the two lampposts is around say 300 meters. So by making use of those lampposts only, irrespective of whether the distance is 100 or 500 or 1000 meters or I mean whatever, we just make use of two of the distance that is already known to us. So if the range of certain object is known, distance to other objects can be found in relation to the known range. So you get it? It is some sort of a unit of measure, but in unit of measure, we stick to the 100 meters, and normally it's related to the football ground method also. But in case of key range, we are the what is the difference? We are making out the distance between any two known objects. So if I know that the distance between my house and that tree is around 1 kilometer, then using that method, I will try to make out the distance. Okay, that is the key range. So don't get confused. We have already talked about section average, key range, and now halving. Now halving is like, an object is selected in the halfway between the observer and the target. तो मान लो मैंने if I'm checking out the tree which is around 1 kilometer away from me, but then I'm not very sure if it is 1 kilometer away. So how will I be sure? I will check out something which is falling exactly in between me and the tree, which is the target. So if that point, I say at right in the middle way, I find a car which is stationary, it's parked. So if that car, I am just halving it. So I just halved it. I don't know whether the tree is at 1 kilometers. I am just telling you, and I have to judge the distance between me and the tree. So I halved the distance between me and the tree, and I found a car. Now the car also is a little far, so I will halve the distance between me and the car and find that there is a small shop or a kiosk there. Okay, so I find a small shop between me and the car. So now that shop I know is 250 meters away from me. अब उस शॉप का मुझे पता है that shop is at 250 meters away from me. So what will be the distance between me and the car? Double it, because I was checking up half wala landmarks. So landmarks are the prominent points that it can be easily made out. You cannot, of course, check out a moving car, right? So the distance between me and the tree, in order to make that out, I halve it approximately, and I find that there is a car standing there. Now the car is still far away, so I halve it further. I halve that distance further and find that there is a small shop, which is an isolated one, placed there. So if the distance between me and the shop is known, ऐसे करते करते half वहां तक कर लो जहां तक you are very sure of the distance. So I know that this shop is 250 meters away from me. So what will be the distance between me and the car that was parked? 500 meters. And now I double it up further to make it the distance between me and the tree, which is at 1000 meters. So then I will be sure that the target is at around 1 kilometer from me, 1000 meters from me. I hope that's clear. Halving may, we'll just keep on halving and choose a mark which is in between the observer and the target. उसको हाफ करेंगे. अगर उस पॉइंट का श्योरिटी नहीं है तो उसको भी हाफ करेंगे. उसका भी श्योरिटी नहीं है तो उसको भी हाफ करेंगे. Now when you are sure that this place is now quite close and I can make out the distance between me and that point, then you keep on doubling it. So this is known as the halving method to make out the distance between the observer and the target. An object is selected halfway between the observer and the target, then the distance to the selected object is judged. अब यहाँ पे जो एग्जाम्पल दिया उसमें तो they have just chosen कि halfway point पे क्या हो गया, edge of the road. The edge of the road is here at 100 meters. So naturally the distance between observer and the target will be just the double of that, because you are just going to double this distance up to 200 meters. It can be anything. Had this distance be, say, 50 meters, then this total would have been 100 meters. Had this been 75 meters, this would have been 150 meters. Don't get it confused, because 100 meters is another method that we are using. So halving, I hope that's clear. Now let's move on to the bracketing. In bracketing, what happens? The observer works out the maximum and the minimum possible distance of the object and then accepts the mean of the distance. Maximum possible distance कितना होगा? इसमें हम ना अपने section के members का भी opinion ले सकते हैं. We can take the opinion from our section people also. The observer works out the maximum and the minimum possible distance of the object and then accept the mean of that distance. So you choose up the minimum, you choose up the maximum possible distance. Say somebody in your section says it can be around 500 meters. Other person says, now everybody has got varied opinions when we are taking kind of a section average. So somebody says it can be 550, somebody says 650 because missed hai, kuch clear nahi hai. And then somebody comes out with an 800, somebody comes out with an 1100. So what will we choose? We'll choose the minimum distance that was actually guessed up. Not exactly guessed, it's based on logical deductions. So the minimum distance is around 550 and the maximum is 1100. The minimum maximum ko add karo, divide by 2 karo, you get the answer of the distance between the observer and the target. So you get the answer to that. The greater the range, the wider the bracket. Obviously, जितना ज़्यादा range होता जाएगा, उतना bracket हमारा बढ़ता जाएगा. In no case the bracket should be less than 300 yards. If you are using the bracketing method, make sure that the distance between the brackets is not more than 300 yards. If it is less than 300 yards, I think section average would be a better method. But अगर ज़्यादा variation है and you are getting the least and the maximum distance का difference a lot, then in that case you can use the bracketing method. Bracketing में क्या करना है, minimum distance record करना है, maximum distance record करना है और उसका average ले लेना है, that is you add the two and divide it by 2. Now I just stated during the section average, कोई 1100 meters बोलेगा तो बिल्कुल उसको ignore कर देना. Now why did I say that? Why do you have to ignore a value which is weird? Because the rest of the team members are making a guess which is close to the approximate distance that you yourself are making out. When there is a wide variation, then in that case bracketing can be used, and in no case the bracket should be less than 300 yards. Okay, halving is done, bracketing is done, and now let's just revise all the methods that we studied in the judging distances. The methods that are included in judging distances are unit of measure method. What will you remember by the unit of measure? 100-meter method. Normally a football ground is around 100 meters, so you just have a rough idea of the football ground and keep multiplying that with itself, so that you know 100 into 1, 2, 3, 4. So you just make marks like you do it on scale 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter. वैसे वाला mark करो between yourself and the target. That will give you the distance between the observer and the target. Next, we have the appearance method. The closer the target is to you, the better will be the appearance. This is the basic principle of the appearance method. जैसे जैसे दूर होता जाएगा तो appearance हमारा fade होता जाएगा. तो इसीलिए अगर if something is at 400 yards, the body shape will be distinct but the facial features will not be. At 500 yards, the facial features will just vanish off, the movements will be visible, and the body tapers and becomes further indistinct. Then at 600 meters, the face just appears like a dot moving, and you can just check out the movement and make out that the distance of between you and the target is a lot, which is going to be around 600 meters or beyond that point. Beyond that point, sometimes that dot also starts reducing in size, and that those details can be studied only when you actually are expected to move to the battle field directly. Section average, सब लोगों से एक opinion लो, divide it by the total number of the opinions that you've taken. Key range, in key range, what did we do? Key range was similar to the unit of measure method, in which what we did, we just made out the distance between two already known objects. Say we know the distance between two lamp posts is 50 meter, फिर उसको multiply करते जाएंगे to reach till the target. Halving method is like, check out your target, halve it, look for a mark, half it, look for a mark, till you are absolutely sure of the distance between the landmark and yourself. And then you keep doubling it. So if it is 250 meter, you make it 500 for the next landmark, then you make it 1000 meters, depending upon how many times you have halved it. Okay. Then bracketing is like you are checking up a variation. You get a number of variations in the distances which are made out. So you check up the least distance and you check up the maximum distance. You add the two and divide it by 2 gives you the distance based on the bracketing method. So after these, what are more things? Sometimes after all, it's just an estimation based on some kind of a logical deduction of the observations. Okay, so you should be knowing these are very, very important questions that I'm going to talk about now. When is the distance overestimated? Overestimated means that if the distance is around 150 meters, others are guessing it to be 200, 250, 220, more than the distance. So that is overestimation. Overestimation is done when light is bad, sun is in the observer's eye, the object is small in relation to its surroundings, and you are looking through a valley of narrow lane, and when you are lying down. Okay, because light अगर poor होगी तो distance का judge सही से नहीं होगा. So in that case, you tend to overestimate the distance to be on the safer side. When the sun is directly into the observer's eyes, so sometimes the view gets disrupted because of the sunlight falling directly into your eyes, and as a result of that, the distance can be overestimated. When the object is small in relation to the surroundings, तो क्या होता है कि when the object is small और surroundings बहुत clear है, तो surroundings, see if there are hilly, it's in a hilly region where there is a temple on the top of the hill, so you can very clearly make out the temple, but your target is very small. तो उस केस में क्या होगा, आपको हिल पूरी दिख रही है, पूरा उसके ऊपर जो टेम्पल है वो पूरा दिख रहा है, लेकिन द टारगेट इज नॉट क्लियरली विजिबल एंड इट्स वेरी स्मॉल. So what happens in that case? You tend to overestimate the distance when your object is small in relation to the surroundings, because you feel that the surroundings are really big. So the object is small means it must be farther away, although the object is placed just next to the hill which is far away from you. But then you feel that because hill to clearly dikh raha hai, the surroundings are big enough to be clearly visualized, but your target is very small. So in that case you tend to overestimate, zyada bata doge distance ko. When you're looking through a valley of narrow lane or a street, in that case again you are overestimating the distance. And when you are lying down, लेट के देख रहे हो, तो लेट के देख रहे हो तो वैसे ही पूरा सीन ही बड़ा सा दिखने लगता है, तो in that case again you will overestimate the distance of the target. Okay, so the topmost 5 points which are given for overestimation are very important. These questions are almost repeated every year for FCBC. When is the distance overestimated? When we are talking about distance, it's of course the distance between the observer and the target. So when it is overestimated, when light is bad, sun is falling in the observer's eye, when the object is small in comparison to the surroundings, when you are looking through a valley of narrow lane into a wider region, and when you are lying down. ठीक है, अब जब now the next question that can crop up is when is the distance underestimated? So underestimated में everything will be just the opposite. When the light is too bright, when the sun is behind the observer, when the object is too big in relation to the surroundings, when you are looking through a wider range into a narrow valley, and when you are just standing on top of a hill. So these are the places, like when can the distance be underestimated? Check out the difference. When the light is absolutely bright, in overestimation the light was bad. Okay, when the object is large in relation to its surroundings, when there is some dead ground between the observer and the object. पता है dead ground क्या होता है? I will just talk about the types of grounds and you will understand. Dead ground is the ground which is not visible to the viewer. तो क्या होगा कि आप उस डिस्टेंस को तो काउंट ही नहीं करोगे क्योंकि वो दिख ही नहीं रहा है. And it can actually be some kind of a big pit or a nala which is just running in between the observer and the target, which is say hidden behind a small hill which falls in your way. तो अगर उसके पीछे एक नाला है तो you will not be able to make out that distance because वो दिख ही नहीं रहा है ground. Okay, so then in that case the object also gets the distance between the target and the observer is underestimated, and when you're looking up the hill. Okay, so these are some of the points for overestimation and underestimation which needs to be remembered. Now let me just talk about the types of grounds. The types of grounds, just a sec, I think I'll find them here. Okay, description of the ground, again very important. देखो, there are generally 4 types of grounds. I will just talk about them. Broken ground, flat and open ground, high ground, dead ground. Broken ground, as the name suggests, is going to be uneven with small pits, nullas, bumps, folds on the ground. So you should be knowing that the uneven ground is the broken ground, टूटा फूटा ground. Okay, टूटा फूटा कैसे होगा? जब बीच में छोटे छोटे नल्लास होंगे. Nullas means the normal nalas that you talk about. Then bumps, there will be small pits, small gaddhas that you talk in Hindi of. जैसे छोटे छोटे गड्ढे होंगे या कुछ होगा, तो all of that is just your broken ground. And it is actually suitable for move of infantry by the day, क्योंकि broken ground है, थोड़ा सा uneven है, लेकिन infantry is like the ones who do the work on the ground, who are working on the battlefield on the ground. Okay, so that is what refers to an infantry. So it is absolutely suitable for the movement on legs, on two legs, right, by the army. So that's what is known as an infantry. I repeat, broken ground is clear to everybody. It's uneven and it is interspersed with nallas, bumps, folds, etc. फ्लैट एंड ओपन ग्राउंड, फ्लैट मतलब बिल्कुल इवन ग्राउंड, उसमें कोई टूटा फूटा कुछ नहीं होगा, इट विल बी इवन ग्राउंड, जैसे कई बार एक गार्डन एरिया होता है लश ग्रीन यू नो, एंड विद वेरी लिटिल कवर. लिटिल कवर मतलब ऐसे बड़े बड़े बुशेस नहीं होंगे जिसके पीछे वन कैन हाइड. सो इट इज नॉट एट ऑल सूटेबल फॉर मूव बाय इन्फेंट्री. बिकॉज क्या है, ब्रोकन ग्राउंड में वाई इज इट सूटेबल फॉर इन्फेंट्री, कोई अगर गड्ढा है जिसके अंदर अ पर्सन कैन लाई डाउन कंफर्टेबली एंड हाइड वन सेल्फ. So agar suddenly there is an attack from the army enemy, so then in that case one can easily lie down. In broken ground there may even be nullas में थोड़ी थोड़ी growth भी हो जाती है कई बार. So there can be bumps and folds and one can hide comfortably in that. लेकिन फ्लैट एंड ओपन ग्राउंड में तो कोई गड्ढा ही नहीं होगा, कोई कुछ कुछ होगा ही नहीं छुपने के लिए, छोटे छोटे बुशेस होंगे, तो वन कैन easily be made out by the enemy which one doesn't want. You do not want to lose a life. So remember, flat and open ground is like an open ground, as the meaning suggests. It's an even ground with very little cover. It is not at all suitable for move by infantry during the day. अपनी लाइफ को रिस्क नहीं, डे में क्या है, डे में पूरा लाइट होगा, दिख जाएंगे सबके सब, so there's just no point. And then if we have a high ground is which is much above the level of the general level of the area. Like for example, you're there on a hill, so that's the high ground. So it facilitates the domination of area around it by observation or fire or both. See, if you're there on a high ground, it will always be easier to fire, because जो नीचे से ऊपर आ रहा है, you can always prevent the hindrance. Obviously there is a gravitational pull also. They get tired easily. And then अगर आप ऊपर वाली situation में किसी ऊपर high ground पे located हो, वहाँ से आपका view बिल्कुल clear होता है, right? So if the view is absolutely clear, it facilitates the domination of fire or observation. अगर if you want to make out कि कोई ऊपर आ रहा है या नहीं आ रहा है, if somebody is trying to come up to attack into your army, you can always make it out by observation, and can open fire also comfortably, and both can be done simultaneously. Dead ground, I have just told you what is a dead ground all about. This is the ground that is hidden from the observer's view. हिल के पीछे एक नाला है, दिखेगा ही नहीं, तो वो डेड हो गया हमारे लिए. या हिल के पीछे का कोई भी ऐसा रीजन है which is just going away from the view. मान लो there is like a big cover by a lot of trees. ठीक है, अब trees के पीछे का एरिया नहीं दिख रहा, but then the rest of the trees are at a distance. So whatever is not visible to the observer is all dead ground. जरूरी नहीं है वो नाला ही हो, अगर कुछ नहीं दिख रहा है between you and the target, then that is referred to as the dead ground. So what are the types of grounds? Broken ground, flat and open ground, high ground, dead ground. Which ground is good for the movement of infantry? High ground is also good, I mean, because you're there at some level, but then ultimately depends on what your target or your mission is. Broken ground is comfortable for the infantry to move during the day. फ्लैट एंड ओपन ग्राउंड इज लाइक नॉट अ गुड सजेशन टू मूव ड्यूरिंग द डे टाइम. तो अगर वहां पे मूवमेंट करनी पड़ी कि फ्लैट एंड ओपन ग्राउंड है, तो कब करोगे मूवमेंट? रात को. ठीक है. Then we talk about the high ground, which is of course at some high level, and dead ground, which is totally hidden from the observer's view. So lastly, I am going to revise once again. Types of grounds are 4 types: broken ground, flat and open ground, high ground, dead ground. Repeat it after me: broken ground, flat and open ground, high ground, dead ground. Good. Okay. So what are the points that are to be remembered? This is like a general read through, when you actually read through to gain knowledge about making out distances. Open ground through easy to though easy sorry I'm sorry open ground though easy to traverse is very dangerous, I told you, in the vicinity of the enemy, क्योंकि छुपने के लिए जगह ही नहीं होगी, तो you can easily be targeted. While taking position in open ground, remember it is vulnerable from enemy's fire and observation. This is what I've been stating in and out. Broken ground offers protection from flat trajectory weapons, because you need to know about the weapons. So flat trajectory are the ones which can be used on the flat ground comfortably. but not against high trajectory weapons. High trajectory तो उसमें भी आ जाएगा, यूं ऊपर से उड़ के आएगा, you know the projectile motion, so it will just go up in the air and come down onto the nalla if you are hiding there. So it is good to it offers good protection from the flat trajectory weapons जो straight जाते हैं, तभी कहते हैं लेट जाओ whenever there is fire, because majority of the pistols, when you hear some kind of a pistol sound, bullet being shot out of a pistol, you are asked to lie down. आपने movies में भी देखा होगा, everybody lies down. Why? Because majority of the weapons which are generally available with the normal public are the flat trajectory weapons. So the flat trajectory is something which which will go straight, but the high trajectory weapons are the ones which will go up and then finally come down to target the enemy who is there on the ground, also just hiding somewhere. So dead ground does not afford cover from the high trajectory weapons. Afford cover from the high trajectory weapons. Of course, high trajectory weapons are of the type which are meant to focus, target the enemy, wherever the enemy is hiding. So now, procedure of the description. For when you talk about the distances, like we've just talked about how to make the distance in terms of some kind of a value. We have seen unit of measure, unit of measure, halving, bracketing, key range. What else? Halving, bracketing, key range. Then you have section average. So you have all of those methods for judging distances. There is another general procedure for description of the ground. Why is the description required? Like if I just have to tell you that मैं किस चीज को टारगेट कर रही हूँ, अगर मुझे समझाना है पूरे सेक्शन को कि आई एम टारगेटिंग दैट ट्री, नाउ अब वहां पे 4 ट्रीज हैं, तो कोई anybody can check out any other tree
It's
that I'm
12
referring
o'clock.
to, right? It can be a tree, it can be a tree to the extreme left, it can be a tree to the extreme right, it can be either of the two of the middle ones, if there are same more than one tree. So how do I actually explain? रास्ते में अगर और भी ट्रीज हैं, सेंटर हाफ डिस्टेंस पे भी है, कोई उस ट्री को देखेगा तो बिल्कुल क्लियरली देयर शुड बी अ प्रोसीजर ऑफ डिस्क्रिप्शन. सो फॉर दैट वी मेक आउट अनदर थिंग, दैट इज फोरग्राउंड, which is up to 300 yards. तो जितना भी डिस्टेंस होता है एट टिल 300 yards, यू से फोरग्राउंड. तो अगर मुझे कुछ एक्सप्लेन करना है, नो नो चेक आउट दैट ट्रैक्टर विच इज स्टैंडिंग देयर ऑन द फार्म्स, सो देन आई से इट इज इन द फोरग्राउंड. मुझे ये नहीं बताना ये 300 yards है, 500 yards है, या बियॉन्ड 500 yards है. So I will just be saying the target on my target, okay. Then I give a general line of description which is also known as GLD, okay. For explaining the GLD I say tractor, foreground. ये कुछ terminologies, keywords हैं, the ones which are used for the description of your target along with the distance. So distance के लिए, distance describing the ground, कि ground कौन से वाले ग्राउंड को रेफर कर रही हूँ, तो हम अपने ग्राउंड को 3 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड कर देते हैं. वी डिवाइड आवर ग्राउंड इन 3 पार्ट्स. द वन विच इज अप टू 300 yards इज foreground. Between 300 and 500 is your middle distance, and beyond 500 yards is known as far distance or simply distance. Okay, so up to 300 yards foreground, from 300 to 500 yards middle distance, beyond 500 yards far distance. Okay, now GLD is what I was talking about. GLD is the general line of description. जैसे मैंने बोला कि आपको अगर कोई भी ट्री, अगर 4 ट्रीज हैं, तो उसमें से मैं कौन सी ट्री को रेफर कर रही हूँ या मैं कौन सी चीज को रेफर कर रही हूँ, तो उसके लिए आई विल हैव टू डिफाइन माई लाइन ऑफ व्यू so that everybody's line of view becomes the same. So if I want everybody's line of description to be the same, I will have to choose a proper landmark. What type of a landmark? Which is clearly distinct from the rest. So now if I'm talking about a tree next to a temple, I will just give the explanation according to that. So always give the GLD by pointing out a centrally located landmark. I say GLD tree next to the temple. तो सारे वो बाकी के ट्रीज एकदम से इग्नोर हो जाएंगे एंड दे विल जस्ट बी कंप्लीटली इग्नोर्ड बाय द रेस्ट ऑफ द मेंबर्स ऑफ माय सेक्शन एंड दे विल फोकस ऑन दैट ट्री व्हिच इज नेक्स्ट टू द टेंपल. Okay, then I say distance. Now when I say distance means it is beyond 500 yards, right? If I say tree next to the temple, middle distance. So then my section will automatically understand that it is the distance, that it is the ground which I am referring to between 300 and 500 yards, or tree konsa wala, which is next to the temple. So there has to be a clear cut landmark also. Example, section, look in front. This is like, a kind of description which is given to the rest of the members. Section, look in front, 500, red house. Okay, so 500 is kind of an explanation of the distance and red house. Line joining own position, red house beyond GLD. अब उसके आगे, अब मेरे को ये तो मैंने जनरल लाइन ऑफ डिस्क्रिप्शन बना दिया, लेकिन मुझे मंदिर या ट्री पे टारगेट नहीं करना. आई डोंट हैव टू टारगेट ऑन दैट monument. So I just now take you to the right or to the left, depending upon how I want to take you. So now, after giving out a general line of description, after giving out the GLD, it's called the GLD. We are expected to tell now GLD के left में देखें या right में देखें. Say supposedly I want to refer to the tree which was to the left of the temple. Now that I've started talking about the temple as on the top of a hill, so I will say that distance means beyond 500 yard, GLD, temple, 100 yards to the left of the temple. So you look at the tree which is at 100 yards. I mean, and you will say a green tree. You will also have to name your target, because target ka naam hoga tabhi it will make it absolutely clear. So there are just, the talking is not in terms of full statements and explanation. Nahi, udhar dekho, na. It is absolutely focused. So it is like you are given a distance, you are expected to look absolutely in the GLD as being shown by the observer, and then you will have to follow up the directions from there. So it is like that, because in the battlefield there will hardly be any time to just understanding kya bol rahe ho. Now wahan pe there are no repetitions, there is no just a second that's coming back to you for an explanation. So divide the area into foreground, middle distance, and distance. ये तो मैंने बता ही दिया है that the explanation is given according to the type of the ground. If the ground is in an arc, then it has to be described. Then start from the left to the right systematically and cover the description, because the left and the right also need to be stated properly. If the ground is all around if the ground which is all around is to be described, then start from GLD. मतलब पूरा अगर हमें ग्राउंड को समझाना है तो हम चले जनरल लाइन ऑफ डिस्क्रिप्शन समझाएंगे. एंड रिमेंबर, योर जनरल लाइन ऑफ डिस्क्रिप्शन इज वन लाइन दैट इज क्रिएटेड फॉर एवरीबडी. फिर सब कुछ उस लाइन में जो है वो सब दिखता है. तो उसके बाद जनरल लाइन ऑफ डिस्टेंस. फिर जैसे ही आप बोलोगे कि इट इज मिडल डिस्टेंस, तो सारा फोकस दूर से कहाँ आ जाएगा, बिल्कुल 300 to 500 यार्ड्स के बीच में. फिर आप लेफ्ट राइट अपनी टीम को जैसे ले जाना चाहते हो फ्रॉम द व्यू पॉइंट, यू कैन जस्ट एक्चुअली टेक इट अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट. So it has to be very judiciously done. So in this particular presentation, what did we do? We just checked out the types of grounds, procedure, and description. In the types of ground, we had 4 types: broken ground, tuta puta wala, flat and open ground, bilkul clear, which is very going to be difficult for the move of the infantry during the day. Then you have high ground, which is from the top or from the general level of the plains. Okay, then we talk of after the high ground, we talk of the dead ground, which is hidden from the view of the observer. We talk of the procedure of description of the ground, in which we talk about foreground, middle distance, and far distance. Foreground is up to 300 yards, middle distance is between 300 to 500 yards, far distance is beyond 500 yards. Okay, then for the description, your GLD is very important. You have to give the GLD along with the description of the ground in terms of distance, whether it is fore, middle, or at a distance, far distance. So that is to be explained along with a landmark, which is important. Now, once the GLD is defined, you can move to the left or to the right, because it is not always possible to have a landmark next to your target. अगर लैंडमार्क नहीं है तो आप एक लैंडमार्क सेट करके GLD डिफाइन करके फिर you will be explaining after that whether you have to move to the left or to the right. Right? With this, we complete the description of the ground also. I hope it's clear to everyone. All right. So next we move on to FCBC, in which we talk about the recognition, description, and indication of the landmarks. Now you have a fair idea about how to make out the distance in terms of value. You know how to recognize your target by making use of the GLD, distance, and the description of the ground, which is for middle or far distance. So landmarks and other objects, these are very important on the ground on a battlefield. क्योंकि landmarks are something which is clearly distinct from the rest, and it will make your team focus onto the landmark. And other objects on the ground, uh, which are there on the battlefield, may be not absolutely distinct due to climatic conditions or other reasons. So we have to take care of such things as well. There may be too many of the same type. तो लैंडमार्क के लिए फिर वहीं पे हमारा सारा फोकस, अगर मेरे landmarks, जैसे I said that you can find 4 trees around. I said my landmark is a green tree. Now there are so many green trees around, so there may be so many of the same type. Okay, sometimes there may be mist or fog, which doesn't make your landmark absolutely clear, is what the first point refers to. So I repeat, in this case, in the present case, why do we need a clear-cut recognition and description and indication of the landmark and target? So for that, we need to understand the landmarks and other objects on the ground on a battlefield. Okay, they may not be distinct due to climatic conditions. There may be too many of the same type. We need to ensure quick and accurate indication by commanders and recognition, because of course those orders are to be followed, and we should know exactly as to what what target do we have to work on. पता चले 9 लोग एक टारगेट पे काम करें, 10वां बंदा किसी और टारगेट पे फोकस कर रहा है, तो then it becomes a futile exercise. You wasting your arms and ammunitions. So that is not to be done. So even the aids to be used for indicating difficult targets have been laid down as a part of this particular section, in which you will be learning about the recognition, description, and indication of the targets. Now, what is a landmark? A landmark is that object which is prominent on the ground, which is used in verbal orders to explain the ground in front. I have been using it right from the beginning of the description of the grounds and recognition of the targets. So I think landmark is what? It is that object which is clearly distinct, prominent on the ground, and which is used in verbal orders to explain the ground in front. Okay, so now you see that there is a small tree. There is like a tree which is totally, which has shed off its leaves completely. And then on the right, you see a small raise. I'm just not able to make out the exact word for it. So let's talk about a reference point. Because आपने landmark दे दिया. These are some of the things which are going to help you in the description of the target. You can even give the reference point for that particular moment. See, the reference point in the first figure comes out as number 1 reference point, which is car. All right. Number 2 is between the lamppost and the swings. So this is how the reference points are given. So the car moving in between the tree and the lamppost, which is of course going to move. Because let me tell you, the reference points with the mobile phases, जो भी moving वाले objects होते हैं, वो हमेशा difficult होता है. लेकिन जो भी stationary वाले होते हैं, it's always easy to make out. So the reference point is a prominent and an unmistakable object, जिसमें कोई गड़बड़ नहीं हो सकती है, with the help of which you can indicate other landmarks or target. Tree to the left of the car moving just now. So this is a reference. What did I use as the reference? The car. The tree to the left of the car is it becomes another reference point. So a prominent and an unmistakable object with the help of which you can indicate other landmarks of targets. A reference point should be very specific. Okay, ये नहीं है कि ऐसे roughly बोल दिया, just look in between the trees. Now where to look in between the trees? Very weird. So it has to be a proper reference point which is absolutely specific. Okay, so we talked about the landmarks. Landmarks are absolutely prominent objects which can be visibly seen distinctly. Reference points refers to, it is something used for the reference of the other. Okay, you may think that reference point also has to be specific, landmark also has to be specific. So how do you make out the distance? Landmark is totally specific. Reference point is used to explain probably your landmark or some other position or target. अब टारगेट क्या है? It is that object which is having a tactical significance, which is indicated with the view to bring down fire on it. Because आपको reference point पे fire चलानी है नहीं चलानी है will be decided by your leader, all right? Section supervisor. Here, in this particular case, you have to have a target where you know where the fire is to be opened. I'm just referring to a tree as a reference point, and I'm referring to a house to the left of the tree as a landmark, but the target is still not known. The target has to be specific. Why is the target important? Because this is that object which is having a tactical significance, which is indicated with a view to bring down fire on it. You need not bring down fire on your landmark or on your reference point. Target is the one which is used for the final goal or the aim where you have to reach. Methods of indication of easy target. Okay, now first one is indication by description. Now target number 1, section, bridge. Section is to call out, class, pay attention. So it is like that kind of a command. Class. So because I know my section is of 10 people, I have a full, our section is of 10 people. So I'm saying number 1, that's the reference point. Section, bridge. So your bridge happens to be now your reference point number 1. Now indication by direction or range or both. We can make use of range also. Now indication by direction number 1. तो ये हमारी एक GLD बन गया, general line of description. So indication by direction number 1. So everybody will look in the direction of number 1 reference point. अब number 1 क्या था हमारा? Bridge. वो तो पहले ही define हो गया था. Section, बाएं बगीचा. तो उसके बाएं means it's the left hand side. तो section देखेगा कहाँ? To the left of your number 1 reference point onto the बगीचा. Okay? There is another. ये तो डायरेक्शन हो गई ना, मैंने बोला लेफ्ट देखो या राइट देखो, ये डायरेक्शन हो गई. नाउ इंडिकेशन बाय रेंज. नंबर 1 सेक्शन 600 बगीचा. So 600 refers to the 600 yards. So this can also be explained by saying 600 is between beyond 500. So you can say number 1 section far distance बगीचा. ये भी रेंज हो गया because हमारा डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ ग्राउंड अभी हमने पढ़ा है. If it is less than 300, it is foreground. If it is between 300 and 500, it is the middle distance. If it is beyond 500, then it is the far distance. So indication by range can also be done by making use of the range of the grounds that we've understood in terms of the yards definition. So indication by direction, you say number 1, section, बाएं बगीचा. बाएं is like बाएं and दाएं. Bain is very well known to you, the left hand side, and dain would be your right hand side. Indication by range. Range is where you are giving a rough idea of the distance also to what you are referring to. All right. And then direction and range both can be used. Bain 600 bagicha. Okay. Indication of difficult targets. Now the target which cannot be indicated by the methods given above, which are the simpler ones, are called the difficult targets. Difficult ones are to be, तो difficult one अगर target difficult है तो समझाना तो फिर भी है, because we have to actually fight out against the enemy so that we pull them down. The direction method, इसके अंदर क्या करते हैं? GLD is very important. You should be having a known reference point and the landmark. All these things are to be remembered for giving the proper description of the target. कौन सा? GLD, which is the general line of direction, known reference point होना चाहिए और landmark clear होना चाहिए. This is something that you have understood already. General line of direction क्यों बनाएंगे? एक अपने और टारगेट के बीच में एक लाइन बना देंगे ताकि सभी उसी लाइन के बीच में देखें. अब अगर मेरा टारगेट इज डिफिकल्ट वन, तो मैं टारगेट नहीं समझा सकती, एक रेफरेंस पॉइंट तो ले सकती हूँ, एक लैंडमार्क तो ले सकती हूँ. So I will just take it according to that. So this is your direction method. You will choose your general line of direction. You will choose a known reference point, or you can choose even a landmark. You know the difference between reference point and a landmark now. Landmark is a clear-cut, distinct object on your view, and reference point is something but with the help of which you are explaining another object or another point on your view, which is falling in your view. Okay. Now all directions are taken to be with the reference of the GLD, क्योंकि एक बार आपने जनरल लाइन ऑफ डायरेक्शन समझा दी, फिर उसके बाएं में जाओ, राइट दाएं में जाओ, वो आपको फिर उसके बाद समझाना है कैसे. अब उसके लिए there are a number of methods. You can even make use of your hand very well by making use of your fist. Let's not go into the details of that. Let's just talk about the direction first. देखो डायरेक्शन से समझा सकते हो. एक बार जीएलडी बन गई, जनरल लाइन ऑफ डायरेक्शन, कि हमारा ये स्ट्रेट अवे पॉइंट है, तो उसके लेफ्ट में जाना है, राइट में जाना है, समझाओगे कैसे? समझाओगे स्लाइट लेफ्ट, स्लाइट राइट, थोड़ा थोड़ा सा. सो दैट मीन्स स्लाइट लेफ्ट, स्लाइट राइट मीन्स अप्रोक्सीमेटली 10 डिग्रीज मूव करो. मैथ्स का आइडिया तो सबको है, यू हैव डन इट इन योर लोअर ग्रेड्स, तो सबको पता है कि वो प्रोट्रैक्टर या डी कैसे यूज करते हैं. सो आई डोंट थिंक दैट शुड बी अ प्रॉब्लम. तो उस केस में स्लाइड लेफ्ट स्लाइड राइट का मतलब है हम 10 डिग्री से ज्यादा मूव नहीं करेंगे लेफ्ट और राइट में जीएलडी के. ठीक है. क्वार्टर लेफ्ट एंड क्वार्टर राइट मीन्स 22.5 डिग्री और 22.5 डिग्री अप्रोक्सीमेटली. 45 इज एग्जैक्टली हाफ ऑफ योर परपेंडिकुलर, हाफ ऑफ योर 90 डिग्री. अगर हमें हाफ लेफ्ट हाफ राइट बोला है तो वी विल डायरेक्टली लुक इनटू 90 का आधा, मतलब जो स्ट्रेट खड़ा है उसके बीच में जब लाइन मारोगे, सो दैट इज लाइक इफ यू हैव दिस एज योर 90, दिस इज योर 45 एग्जैक्टली. उन दोनों के बीच में दिस इज योर परपेंडिकुलर, देन दिस इज योर 45 डिग्री. सो हाफ लेफ्ट हाफ राइट वुड बी अप्रोक्सीमेटली 45 डिग्रीज. 3/4 लेफ्ट एंड 3/4 राइट. 3/4 का मतलब अब और उसमें ऐड कर दो, तो दिस विल बी एक्चुअली towards the ground and say 22.5 degrees from the ground, which is approximately 67.5 degrees from your general line of direction. Now full left full right. full left means पूरा उससे लेफ्ट घूम जाओ, जीएलडी से सीधा 90 डिग्री पे लेफ्ट मुड़ जाओ, बिल्कुल सीधा टर्न ले लो लेफ्ट और सीधा टर्न ले लो राइट. That is approximately 90 degrees. So these terminologies have a meaning to explain your difficult targets. सो यू हैव अ जनरल लाइन ऑफ डिस्क्रिप्शन, वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होना चाहिए. कोई भी लैंडमार्क या रेफरेंस पॉइंट है तो वंडरफुल, समझाना आसान हो जाता है. और उसके बाद आपने देखना है कि कितना लेफ्ट मुड़ना है, कितना राइट मुड़ना है, एंड दैट विल एक्चुअली योर कीवर्ड्स विल डिस्क्राइब द एग्जैक्ट मेजर. स्लाइट लेफ्ट स्लाइट राइट मीन्स अप्रोक्सीमेटली 10 डिग्री. quarter left quarter right means approximately 22.5 degree. Half left half right means approximately 45 degrees. 3/4 left and 3/4 right means 67.5 degrees, and full left and full right means approximately 90 degrees. All right, so with this we've just understood as to how to go about describing our targets well, by making use of the description of the ground, by making use of the description of the target, distance, by making use of landmarks and reference points. और हमें डिस्टेंस मेकआउट करना आता है कैसे? उसके लिए हमारे पास 6 मेथड्स हैं. 6 मेथड्स कौन से हैं? यूनिट ऑफ मेजर मेथड, यू हैव की रेंज, यू हैव ब्रैकेटिंग, यू हैव हार्विंग, यू हैव सेक्शन एवरेज, and I'm missing out on one. Just check it out. You fill in the blank. Okay, so let's move on to the next. We'll just finish up this class after talking about this particular FCBC, and then there are some 3-4 more topics which are to be covered. I think I will cover them up at 7 p.m. today in our evening class. Okay, so let's get started with the observation, camouflage and concealment. This is important because when you want to fight out with the enemy's army, so then in that case you of course would not like to be targeted. And how can you be targeted? If you come into the view of the enemy. So for that, in order to hide yourself or to completely get blinded out from the enemy's viewpoint, you have to camouflage yourself. Camouflage, many of you know the meaning of it. It comes from a French word camoufleur. Exam में ऐसा कुछ नहीं पूछेंगे, पता होना चाहिए. It means to blind or to veil. Camouflage, also called protective concealment. Concealment मतलब भेस बदलना, means to disguise an object in plain sight in order to conceal it from something or from someone, is what is camouflage. You've seen the combat dress of the army. It's there with patches, green patches, beige patches, and it's like a wonderful dress. I really find it truly very, very attractive. And in the sense that, it gives that kind of a character of an army man, who's just absolutely ready to go to the battlefield. It gives me that kind of a sense of pride when I look at the army men in their combats. So camouflage is basically, what is it defined as? The action of misleading the enemy by concealing or misrepresenting the identity of own troops. Sometimes when one is there in the battlefield, you even in that combat are expected to just, put some bushes and branches around yourself. Why? So that, the moment it's required, you just camouflage yourself completely. And it looks like a normal bush when it is like a human being. If you check out the pictures I tell you of camouflage, you can check out some of the videos which are already uploaded on YouTube. You would just be mesmerized by the way in which the conduct is carried out. So camouflage is defined as the action of misleading enemy by concealing or misrepresenting the identity of own troops, equipment, installations, and activities. In this we will see why things are seen. पहले चीजें दिखती क्यों हैं, और अगर ये समझ जाएंगे कि वो दिखती क्यों है, तो फिर हम उन वाले क्यों वाले फैक्टर को अगर हम हटा देंगे, तो देन इट विल बी इजी फॉर अस टू जस्ट हाइड आवरसेल्व्स, राइट? अगर हमें पता है बहुत लाइट में हम दिखते हैं, तो हम उस लाइट को ही हटा देंगे, डार्क में जाएंगे ताकि हम दिखे ही ना. सो इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू कम डाउन टू द सोर्स, understand the protocol of the army, which is so beautiful. If you understand the source, finish the source then and there itself, and you will immediately get to know as to how to save yourself. क्योंकि source खत्म, जैसे कहते हैं ना, ना रहेगी, क्या, I'm just forgetting that saying. Can somebody remind me of a Hindi saying which says कि वो are you all here with me? Can I get an acknowledgement from?
Yes, ma'am.
Jain to everyone. I already said that right at the beginning. So, do you remember that phrase जिसमें कहते हैं ना कि ना रहेगी dash तो ना
रहेगी बांस, ना बजेगी बांसुरी.
ना रहेगी बांस और ना बजेगी बांसुरी. Very, very, very good. All right. So here we talk about the same thing. So it is very important to remember the source. So why things are seen? ये question आता है exam में. So for this you have to remember the 7 S's. All right. Shape, shine, shadow, silhouette, surface, spacing, smoke, sound, movement. ठीक है, मान लो आपने you have put up a camp somewhere. If you actually are cooking something, the smoke in the forest or your camp area will give an indication to others as to where there is some kind of an inhabitation by somebody. Okay, so smoke, sound, if you make a lot of sound, and if there is a sound, you can also make out. These are some of the characteristics of making out where there is any kind of say living organism staying on. Sometimes army is even put to front to check out if there is like a tiger which gets loosened up from the sanctuary into the areas of population. So in that case, these are also some of the things that help one to make out. Movement is another, shape is another, shine is another, shadow, silhouette, surface, and spacing. So all of these points are to be remembered so that you know as to why things are seen. Shape, shine, shadow, silhouette, surface, spacing, smoke, sound. As many S's as you can put along with movement. Okay, important question, very, very important question. And you just have to put in the keywords, that's all. You do not have to explain these words. Shapes, shine, shadow, silhouette, surface, spacing, smoke, sound, movement. I hope half of you have now would be remembering at least half of them. Good. Now, why things are seen, let's talk about all of these points quickly. Shine, it's any object which reflects and give away its position to the basic brightness of the atmosphere. Metal on the equipment, अगर कोई भी अगर metal है हमारे कैप में या कहीं जो light reflect करेगा, तो वहां से भी immediately दिख जाएगा. These are some of the pictures that are showing. See, that person is hiding actually behind the small bush here next to the tree. Can you make out? Yes, you can make out. So now here you have, see, some kind of a metal which is shining. So this is kind of vulnerable to attack. The person may be trying to act smart, but all of these things need to be checked before. So this person is now vulnerable to attack. Now here the person is at a far distance, much beyond 600 yards from the observer's viewpoint. But then still there is some kind of a shine. So that shine refers to some kind of a reflection during the daylight. So vulnerable to attack again. This is one kind of a cap that is used generally along with the combat, so that there are no such kind of metallic equipment, metallic material on it, which gives any kind of reflection to the shine. Then why things are seen. Another point that is still heard, the dark shape, that's the shape that is generally reflected in the dark, and the outline. So if you're there standing in front of the light, your body shape actually gets clearly visible. So this is another way in which one can easily be seen. So objects silhouetted against contrasting background. You have a contrast at the back, right? Contrasting background means that this is absolutely dark, and then here you have absolutely bright background, and therefore you can easily make out the person's moving. Now, why are things seen? We can also see them because of the shape. This is just a bush. So there is a person right hiding here. So you just cannot make out because that person merges with the bush. All right. And here you can absolutely make out because you can see the shape and make out that it's some kind of a figurine or a human being situated right there. So a soldier from an enemy's army probably can be easily made out. Surface may just look at the way that this person is camouflaged. I am not giving you quizzes right now because your examination is just right there next to you. So here you can see that how the person has actually camouflaged himself into the surface. So the surface, had it been green and this person would have been hiding onto a green surface, then again that person would have been clearly visible. Okay. Then spacing, of course, can also make one see, as to how things can be visualized. Objects spaced regularly tend to draw the attention, right? And evenly spaced electric poles are obviously always visible. Then you see smoke. I just talked about the smoke that can be used for getting noticed. And then if a man is otherwise not visible, noise always draws attention to the spot. You know that. Movement, of course. Now, this person may have actually camouflaged himself completely. So if he is stationary, one cannot make out whether that's a person or some kind of natural thing which is just as a part of the scenic vision. But here, the moment the person starts moving, one can easily make out. So movement is, of course, one of the most important factors which helps us see things. So in personal camouflage, how can we make use of camouflage for doing it for a personal use? Use of disruptive pattern clothing. I talked about the combat dress, right? And then along with the combat dress, one needs to actually make out you need to camouflage your face as well. Otherwise, the face will look absolutely distinct because it will have a contrast from the rest of the dress. So this is how the camouflage is done. Camouflage of the equipments that one is carrying, because मान लो आपने combat dress पहना है या camouflage dress पहना है which is especially made for a particular ground, तो उसके बाद अगर आपका accessories में वो camouflage नहीं होगा तो फिर again you will be made out, you will be easily seen, right? Just a sec. Right, I'm sorry for the break. Let's get back again. We were here. So camouflage of the face. So your accessories also need to be camouflaged. And of course, your weapons need to be camouflaged again. Now, how many men are seen here if you're asked? Sometimes, immediate question may make you fumble. अब मैंने पूछ लिया है तो आप ध्यान से picture में देखोगे. Right? You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But then if you check out, there may be more hiding into the bushes, right? Can you see somebody here, right? So it all depends on how one is camouflaging. And, the ones who are clearly visible are the ones with the contrast. Now, this person is absolutely immediately visible. तो सबसे पहले अगर किसी को उड़ाना होगा, सबसे पहले ये दिखेगा, easy वाला target सबसे पहले जाएगा. So this person will be shot down immediately. Then you look onto the next lighter color, which is going in contrast with the background. So it's like that. You may actually, if you look carefully, you will find some people hiding behind the bushes as well. So this is how one actually camouflages. And let me tell you the beauty in which our army is trained, the beauty in which our army is trained is like so spectacular that even if they're just being, you will just not be able to make out whether that's a bush or a person who's hiding there. That's the beauty of the learnings of the camouflage. Okay, this is just a clear closer look to just check out the people who are hiding. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And there was one which was hiding by behind in the bushes. I could check out. Types of covers and correct use. Cover from view. Cover from view. Soldier concealed from view, but not from fire. Here, see, he's concealed from the view, but not from fire. Right? And then you have bush hiding the soldier from the view, but not from fire. Okay? Because one is always vulnerable to attack. And it all depends on the camouflage and concealment which is just done. So there has to be a proper correct usage of the camouflage also. And it has to be done accordingly. Cover from fire. Fire means that how to save oneself from the gunshot of the enemy. Because if only you are alive, that you can be able to defend your army very well. This implies that the concealed person is protected from both view and fire of the weapon. क्योंकि हमें वेपन से भी बचना है और व्यू से भी बचना है. व्यू में आ गए तो हमें टारगेट करने से वो हटेंगे नहीं. और अगर हम उस वेपन के रेंज में आ गए और हम पे शूट हो गया, so then what is the point of being a part of the army if you cannot run any further? I mean, the point is that you need to work, if you want to work to the best of your abilities, to the maximum of your efforts, then in that case, both of these things are to be kept in mind. That you have to protect yourself from the viewer also, and also from the weapon. But sometimes, each of the armies are trained well, और तभी हमारे बहुत सारे जवान शहीद भी हो जाते हैं. So, I mean, that's truly unfortunate. But let me tell you, is the training that they receive is just beautiful, and they actually can camouflage and conceal themselves to the best of their abilities, unless something just goes wrong onto the final battle drill and makes the mishappenings happen. Right now, I think I can stop right here. uh, for this, we will be left with fire and movement. We'll be left with field signals, section formation, and fire. Knots and lashings, I think, would not be a part of your C certificate exam this time, so we just ignore that. From, I think, FCBC 6 chapter, we'll just cover in the next class. That will happen at 7. So those of you who want to just revise it can come on and just go through it. I will share the recording of this class with you all, so that just in case if you want to revise, you can just move it ahead and do it. And I will try to upload them in our classroom also as early as possible. Okay, all the best, everyone. Keep just going through the course, and I'm sure all of you will come out with an A grade. It's not a demand, but a request. So all the best, everyone. Jai Hind.
Thank you, ma'am. Jai Hind.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.